Welcome to the Cupid's Coach podcast. I'm your host, Julie Ferman, inviting you to transform me to we through your process of doing dating better. I'm super excited. I have somebody great in the hot seat today. It's my buddy from way, way, way back. We've been doing this work together a long time, separately but together. Larry Michael, he is the author of a new book that's coming out right now, and it is called Lasting: Illumination and Essential Questions, all about deepening relationships. Welcome to the program, Larry Michael.
Thank you so much. It is so fun to see you. I mean, it's like, it's been a long time. I think we met in the last century, but it's like.
Well, I moved to LA in 1998 and I started developing my company around 2001, 2002. And it wasn't long after that we began doing the homie hookups. And I've had a lot of people on the podcast that are part of the homie hookup thing, which is all people in the dating and relationship and sometimes matchmaking also space.
Yeah, thank you for Carol Allen for that one, right?
Yeah, and she carried it on. The very first one that we had, I think we had about 10 or 15 people, and it was at Il Fornaio in Beverly Hills. Carol
I was there.
reminded you were there. You drove up from San Diego.
I think that's where we might have met.
Okay, so that explains it. And that was really the beginning of collaboration as opposed to competition in our industry.
You're right. It really was.
Then she picked it up and ran with it, and she's been doing them ever since. And it's just so fun when we all get together. And I love that our industry is collaborative as opposed to competitive. I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah,
So
me too. Especially when it comes to the dating, matchmaking, relationship kindling, supporting part of the industry for sure.
Something I love about you, Larry, is the way you use words. Here's some beautiful phrases that you've come up with. You're the founder of the Institute of Genetic Energetics. Okay, that's going to be interesting to talk about. You're into relationship restoration. Yeah. My husband and I have morphed our relationship many, many, many times in 34 years. We're morphing it again now. Because why be bored, right? Why not keep re-evolving our relationship? And the purpose of your new book is for co-creative evolutionary partnership. It's beautiful. See, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is women come to me every day telling me they want to be with a guy who's highly evolved, conscious, communicative, spiritual, all of that. And they're typically, the women are telling me that they want to meet a man on their level. And you are the kind of guy who is on these highly evolved woman's level. And yet I asked you just a minute ago before we hit the record button, if there's a woman in your life, and you told me you are married, and who are you married to?
Well, I'm married right now to my business. And I mean, there's a longer story to it. And for the last couple of years, it's really been 100% that. And now when I've reached a new kind of milestone that's allowing me to consider partnership again. But I really got to a point where I went, Larry, you're not partnership material right now, right? You just aren't. And I was totally good with it, Julie, because what I'm working on, the Institute of Genetic Energetics, is my Dharma path. I mean, that is the most important thing. So even when I do enter a relationship, my partner needs to know that she's not first.
Now, let's talk about that. Some people know what you mean when you talk about Dharma path, but others won't. So tell me more about that.
So it's a great question because 10 years ago, I never would have used that term. I heard it and I went, oh, that's kind of fascinating. And what it means to me is that I have a calling that I know is mine, that I must follow, that's part of the primary innate reasons why I exist on this planet at this time. And it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a mandate. And it doesn't feel like I'm being forced into it. It feels like I'm really following a path that that I just need to do. And so
beautiful. You're describing me. You are. I love the song that Billie Eilish came out with, What Was I Made For? I just got shivers. I'm made for doing this, and so are
No,
you.
I get that. And I think that's why I love you so much because, you know, from the very beginning of all the different people in this industry, you had an approach and a deep calling that stood out. It was just it had a unique difference, and I never really could get my finger on it other than I appreciated it, and now I know why with what you just said. It makes
Thank you.
sense.
And the reason is very often, like, it's so perfect because you are kind of holding yourself to the side, not yet ready to fully engage in finding your partner because you knew you had work to do. And in the process of figuring out what it is that you needed to do, you're paving the way for the rest of us. And that's probably a lot of what's in your book.
The book is a fascinating little story. If we can jump there for a couple seconds,
Sure.
it I have been working on two other books, and I had no intention to write this one, at least no conscious intention. And it came to me because a friend 7 months ago, so this is current, it was fast how this was written. 7 months ago came to me, had just come out of a relationship where he thought for sure this was the one. And he goes, Larry, I must be stupid or something. What I need to know how to figure out in advance who I should be in a relationship with because I'm clearly not choosing properly, right? Something that you know about with your clients. And he said, help me out. And he says, well, let me tell you what I did. I went looking for books that had all kinds of questions that I could ask my potential partner to get to know her. And all I found were the books were okay, but they didn't really, they just, I couldn't find anything really, really good. And I went, I know that because I've gone through that and because I have clients that have come to me and said, what kind of questions do we need to ask? And I remember the research I had to do to get that information. And I even know with genetic energetics that we had scientists come in and study our typology years ago, and they came up with 300 questions for the purpose of this back then, but it wasn't in my mind and it wasn't in my focus. And he says, so we need these questions. And Julie, I was on my way to Ecuador to produce and direct a movie and a documentary. And I just said to him, let me think about it. And it turned into one of those things, kind of like the best I can describe it is, when you go into like a gift store and you see like a really cool crystal or something and you pick it up and you go, oh, that's kind of expensive. And you went, but I really like it. And then you go, but I don't need it. And then you just kind of like, for me, I'll turn around and I'll go, okay, I'm going to walk away from it. And if I can get 3 blocks away and it's off my mind, then I know I don't need it. But if I'm like for the next block and the next block, I keep thinking about it. I went, must be mine, right? So here I am doing this work in Ecuador. And every time I have a spare moment, I'm going, this keeps coming back into my awareness. Came back to San Diego and called him up and said, okay, I want to do this book, but it's not going to be like what you think. It's not going to be just questions. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, here's the deal. I've been working, and this is the story that I think you're really going to appreciate. I've been working with single women for 2 decades, like well over 100,000 of them in my through genetic energetics. And I decided to shift like 5 years back and focus entirely on partnerships and dove deep into that, doing the love restoration work, right? And then there was a point where I'm going, wow, something is really not right here. Something is really off skew. And it became clearer and clearer to me that every time I listened to someone get on social media or put out some reel and go, we can fix your marriage, or here's how you do this, here's how you repair that. Even my term restoration, Julie, was bugging me, right? And what I realized is of all the psychologists and therapists and counselors and um, coaches and practitioners and uh, you name it, whatever service is out there, 85% of them are focused on repairing relationships. It's back asswards. We need to be prepared for our relationships rather than have to repair them. Repairing them is what Western medicine does, and it doesn't do it very well. The Eastern
So you're
philosophy,
saying prepare, don't repair.
right? So the short version for lasting is preparation more than prepare more than repair equals lasting, right? So I said, okay, we're going to do this with these questions, but before that, we need to lay the groundwork. We need to get back to our innate abilities as human beings so that we can actually listen to questions, ask questions, realize that it's not even so much the question that's important as but how we listen and answer that tells us more about our partnerships. But just be able to hear, be able to be an inquiry, be able to not use labels, to get away from labels, to overcome diversity and differences and be able to embrace those things. These are all critical steps as human beings that we need to have to up-level the humanity that we're in. And if we're going to have relationships that are going to last, we need to do that first, which became the 11 illuminations of the book.
So give me an example of a label or labels that we commonly use in dating that are not serving us.
Oh, let's see. How about we talk about our past because someone cheated on us, so there's cheaters, or I dated a narcissist. Um, that's an extremely popular one, right? Who
It's
have you not
nuts.
talked to that doesn't have a narcissist story? And the reality is that every human being has a little bit of narcissism in there. Are we narcissists? No. Can we exhibit sometimes narcissistic behavior? Yes. Can some people do it more often than others? Absolutely. Do we need to be able to tell the difference? Yes. But if we label them a narcissist before we actually know the circumstances, it's kind of like this, Julie. If I call you something and I say, by the way, you're a narcissist, and I have a closet over here. Look, it's got the door label on it. It says, narcissist, I want you to step in here. You're just going to have to stand in there and we'll talk while you're in that room because that's what you are. Right. So now I put you in there and I close the door and you're going, wait a second, that's not me. That, yeah, maybe I occasionally, no, that's definitely not me, but I labeled you, right? I decided in advance what you are, who you are. And by doing that, I took away all flexibility and possibility for me to see the real you, to experience the true you, to even give myself the opportunity to to receive the reflection from you of who I might be, just because I put a freaking label on you.
Yes, I love that.
ADD, ADHD, all of those things, all of those labels do nothing more than contain people in a space for our protection. We believe our protection, and it's false. And
And
so,
it continues on to a man who's never been married before. He's never had children. You know what that means, don't you? We categorize, and it is for protection. Well, I had this one relationship with a guy who hadn't had children, and he seemed to not be very warm and fuzzy with my children. So now all men who've never had children are unsuitable for a relationship. And I suppose it's a protective device, but it's not very effective.
so the protective device it is addressed in the very first illumination in lasting, which we call inquiry. Right? So we're all born seekers. We are. We come into this world just curious. It's why we hear that term, the child's mind or a beginner's mind. We're curious. And then we're conditioned to judge and conclude. And we're conditioned to judge and conclude so that we can protect ourselves, back to protection, right? So that we can, fend off the things that we supposedly don't want. But when we do that, we eliminate true inquiry. We change the world almost overnight if we could get people to really listen and instead of looking for proof, allow themselves to be surprised by the truth.
Here's the question I'm curious about, Larry Michael.
Okay.
It's related to curiosity, and you're talking about inquiry. In what ways do we limit ourselves in this whole domain of being curious?
So it's so simple, Julie. And once we realize it and we develop a discipline for inquiry, it's fun. And it's like you're asking me a question. You don't have an answer in mind. Look at some interviewers, people have answers in mind, and so they lead people into questions. We don't like that kind of journalism, right? But in your space, when you work with people, you're out to discover who they are so you can best serve and support them, right?
Mhm.
When I'm working with clients, if I'm like looking to prove that, well, yeah, this person is this way because she said that's the way he is, and we need to resolve that from her perspective, I'm not helping either one of them. So I have to ask a question and be truly curious. Like, I'm not looking for a specific answer. I'm eliminating that so I can be surprised by what I get. And that's where the gift is. That's where the opening is. That's where our expansion is. That's where our humanity exists. But when we are looking for something, when we want proof, guess what? It is never what we think we found. It might be momentarily. It might be momentarily. Lots of us have had experiences of, oh, I was certain that's what I found. Well, that's, you can be certain that's what you were looking for. And so you helped yourself find it because that's all you were looking for,
Mhm.
but you didn't get to see everything else. So
Beautiful.
you either missed great opportunity and wealth of experience and joy and abundance, you know, or you refined yourself down to one thing. I just want money and safety and security, and that's it. There are people, and look at, if that's someone's decision and that's what they know they want and they're clear about it, I don't want to take that away from them, but be really clear that that's truly what you want. And in almost every circumstance, if I'm going to be curious and someone says, well, I want someone who's wealthy, I'm going to ask why. Why do you want that? They're going to give me a quick answer. And the quick answer is never the answer. This is one thing about questions, like all the questions that we use to help people discover about each other. They get a first quick answer and they assume that's the answer. It's not. It never is.
We
And
have to
so
pretend we're four-year-olds again, because four-year-olds, you'll answer the question, they'll say, well, why? And why is that? And why is that? We
yeah,
just have to pretend we're four.
yeah, yeah. And people will go, well, that kid's annoying. That was my nickname when I was a kid. I asked so many questions. And I would have like parents say to my parents when they would take me home, like from carpools, and they said, your son asked a lot of questions. And Julie, I thought there was something wrong, right? Because it sounded like it was not a good thing, that I talked too much, that I was too curious. And I just realized I just needed to know. I needed to get to the truth. Now, in my own profiling system, I'm a perfectionist, and perfectionists are truth seekers. So genetically, I'm kind of coded for that. But
Mhm.
ultimately, I think all of us have so much more to gain in terms of our connection, our expression, our level of kindness and understanding, our compassion, just by truly being curious. And that's just the
It's
first
beautiful.
illumination in the book. There's 10 more.
You're the perfect person to ask this question to. As I'm working with men they've been sort of on the sidelines of dating, they haven't really engaged yet. Maybe they were widowed, maybe they had a bad breakup, maybe they were engaged in a big work thing. And the question in my mind is related to what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it that you get prepared enough that you can accept and embrace and invite a woman into your life? Or for you, do you think it's going to be a function? You've done a lot of preparation work. Do you think it's going to be a function of meeting the woman and then you're going to be like, okay, I think I can open my heart to this woman? So what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, it's such a good question because there's so many variations of that experience that men have had. Like they could have had a relationship, been out of it for years before they even came out of the last relationship. They did not understand well the dance of the masculine and the feminine, right? They really, or they didn't know how to be a man, right? Or give themselves permission, or the statistics around boys that have been raised by single mothers are horrendous. It's scary,
Mm,
right? In
mm,
terms of, do they make good partners? And
wow.
yeah, it's not a good statistic. And it doesn't mean it's all that way, but it just means that they're not getting the the nurturing they need from the masculine, from the true masculine, right? From a man. And so they don't have these answers. The only answers they have usually come from their experiences, which are challenging for them, or what they read and what they learn, or the groups that they get together with, and so it's all a learning experience.
It
Now,
sounds to me like what you're saying is that perhaps when young men are raised without a father figure, they don't have the experience of receiving love and giving love to a man the way a child would who had both a mother and a father. Is that what you're
to a
saying?
woman, right? To a woman. Um, yeah, there are a lot of missing pieces there. There's just
So
a lot
for
of
people
experience.
listening, there are people listening who are men who were raised by single women. They're not
Mhm.
doomed, right? What's your recommendation for men who haven't had this parental figure in their life, a male figure?
Some men's groups are really great. You know,
How do you go about finding a men's group? I mean,
oh
I've
my
gone
God,
online.
Google search it. There are so many of them. Mankind Project.
Hmm.
There are so many. Do your research. Like, I'm not an advocate for all of them. There's some that I think are really great, and there's some that I'm not crazy about, because it's more like this kind of
Yeah.
stuff, which, I think the Tarzan part is okay for a while, but that's not the whole picture either.
What about
So,
the Mankind Project? I'm not a man, so I don't get to go, but
yeah.
you've experienced it. Is this something you recommend? And if so, why?
Um, so I haven't gone through it, but I have clients who have. And the experience they're having is giving them an opportunity to see their capacity of how to show up in the world, giving themselves permission to be a provider, giving themselves permission to not have to know everything or expected to know everything, that still be able to learn, and still come from a place of, I want to provide, I want to give, I want to have a partnership where I can create a container for them that's safe, they feel secure, and they feel able to express themselves, right? Without being threatened, and still be in that masculine role. And they're learning that in some of these environments.
It's an
Um,
interesting conundrum because women ask me for, they want a man who's masculine, strong, and capable, and competent, and protective, and nurturing, and all of that. But he's got to make a lot of money too. And, it just
yeah, I
seems
mean,
like,
that there's the security piece, so this is still prevalent. I mean, I could ask you, how many women really want to make sure that they find a match that is financially solvent, that can support them, and not necessarily pay for everything, because they may be a professional in themselves, but they want to know that the man has the ability to create a home and create a safe container for them, that isn't one that is lacking, if you will, and or is short on
ooh,
financial
yeah.
capacity.
So lacking. I love that. So what I've found is that, and it's sinister, I won't allow the word cheap in my office. It's never a man who uses that word, it's usually women. And when I dig under it, what I find is that what she's really saying, or what she's experiencing, she's not saying it, she's experiencing that he doesn't he doesn't utilize his resources in the way that she would like to see him use his resources. So yes, she wants safety and security, but her income, her stature in life already provides that. So part of it's respect, right? She wants to be able to respect him, and she thinks she won't be able to if he's not bigger and stronger than she is in every way, including the financial. But then there's the status thing too. Like, she brings you to her Thanksgiving dinner, and Aunt Carol is like, he's a plumber, right? But plumbers actually could make more than therapists, right? So
A lot more, some of them, yes.
yeah, you could make more money as a plumber than you can as a therapist these days, because we really need plumbers, and there are a dime a dozen therapists. So Part of what I like to see men and women both doing in the preparation for a relationship is taking a good hard look at that status thing. So that's really the next question I want to ask you about your process of getting Larry Michael prepared for a relationship. Can you tell us more about that?
So there's a process that I go through that actually is not mine originally. It came from some good friends of mine, Gerald and Meyer Rose Rogers. And it's the process of writing what we call a relationship manifesto. And it's such a beautiful process. I'm just taking a set of clients through it right now. And when it starts with kind of an I am. Like a lot of people will go, well, this is what I want. I want a woman that looks like this, does these things, has these things, wants to, do all this, just this long list. The man's list is usually not as long as the women's, but sometimes it is, right? It's still a list. And and that's a little backwards because what we really need to do, I think, to even to attract or call in our partner is we need to figure out who we are. What are our own innate needs? What do I love? How do I like to show up? Who do I love to be? You know, I I have a creative side of me that is really fun when it gets to come out. And one of those ways it comes out is flower arrangements. I will go to a wholesale florist and buy flowers and make these incredible arrangements, not for myself, but guess for who, right? And so I want to be able to express that. I want to be able to do that. And now knowing how I feel and how great it feels to be creative and contribute and gift in that way, right? Of course, I can say then I would love a partner who sees that and can receive it, right? But it starts with me. That's where we need to get to. And I invite both men and women to do this, to, get really clear about, okay, if we stop and go, when am I happiest? When am I most joyful? When is life glorious? When am I laughing? And what are the ingredients that are happening in those moments? When am I sad? When am I hurting? What are the ingredients that are happening in those moments? And how do I move through them well? And just look at, this is the healthiest me. And if we know that, and then write a manifesto, which is a description of our relationship, from how we engage in communication, how we contribute, and philanthropically, how we handle money, how we sexually engage, how we raise children, how we, do work within our own community. You can go through kind of a wheel. In fact, in lasting, we have what we call the create flower of life, which is where all our questions are. And there's like 200 of them in the back of that book. And it goes through that, looking at all of those elements. And this is the fun part. When we asked the questions in the book, it wasn't like, let's answer these questions. There's three answers for each question. One is yours. Like if it was you and I doing this, one would be your answer, another would be my answer, and the third answer is the we. And you know this word, right? It's like if we're not focused, you said it yourself, your relationship, you've been together with your partner, with your husband. Oh God, I'm sorry.
34 years.
Yeah, a long time, right? And look at, things change,
Mhm.
people change. Our vision and mission may even change, but if we're on the similar vision and mission for the future and our values are aligned, we can go through all kinds of changes. But that is the critical ingredient. A relationship without it is just an exchange.
All right, Larry, I love this dialogue that we're having. And it occurs to me that there's this beautiful question that our therapist gave me to offer to my husband, and we'll be doing this over the weekend. Okay, I said it out loud. That means it's going to happen. All right.
Oh, good. I
So,
can't wait to hear.
because it's a beautiful, beautiful inquiry, he said that what I need to write down all by myself with my little notepad, and what my husband needs to write down all by himself with his little notepad, is given who I am, given who you know me to be, who can I be for you?
Well, that's wonderful.
Well, ask me in a week or so what we came up with, because we have to write this all up and share it with him. He knows us better than anybody. And you're right. It starts with, okay, not what would you like in an ideal world, but okay, given who I am, okay, I'm not going to be this other person that maybe you fantasize about. I'm pretty well baked, okay? Given who you know me to be, who can I be for you? So he won't be just coming up with something, well, in an ideal world, you'd be Lila, but that might not work given who I am. I'm the girl who
So
gets out of bed at 4 in the morning and can't wait to get to her desk, right? I'm so sorry. It's inconvenient for my husband, but I'm done by 3:30, okay?
that's great.
So
So a question I have with that, I mean, I'm listening to the question, who can I be for you? Like for me, the words I would use is how can I show up for you? Um, how can I show up for you? And but here's the piece. When he answers or when you answer, just remember your first answer is not the answer. So you may say something. So you want to try it for a second? So
sure.
I'm going to ask you, given who I am, now you don't know a lot about me, but we make stuff up if you want, right? And I'm going to ask you, how how can I show up for you, right? And now tell me,
I would say how you can show up for me, Larry, is be present and be give and receive authentically from your heart.
that's beautiful. So I'd like to go a little deeper if we can. So the word present, I may have a different interpretation of it than you do. I'm curious, when you say that, what do you mean? What's that look like for you?
It's like what you were referencing earlier when we're having, if you're, we're not asking a question because we think we know what the answer is going to be. It's like real curiosity is being a bit of a blank slate, right? Like however you answer the question is going to be fine. It's going to be okay. I'm not going to judge it. That's what I
Okay, cool. So now what I get is that you've given me an understanding that allows me to feel safer to express myself, right? So being present in the moment without judgment, that's cool. I like that. Um, and then, if there's something else, you can even go deeper. But the point I'm making here is that when you ask the question, when a word like present or even the word love, the second illumination in the book is called love, and it's because from the point of that chapter on, the word love is removed from all communication and all of our vocabulary for
because
very,
it's so misunderstood.
excuse me?
Because it's so misunderstood.
Yeah, well, yes, that's exactly right. It's because it's used for so many different things. It's used to describe behaviors, circumstances, love languages, for example, that they have nothing to do with love. They have everything to do with circumstances and behaviors that are important that we value a lot, right? So I'm not putting down the process. I think it's great. And I think that the term love languages was very catchy and for marketing purposes, but it has nothing to do with love. Love to me is a life force. It's something we have that we're not ever without it, Julie, ever. We have times in our life when things are difficult and it feels like we're without it, but all you have to do is take a breath to know that you're alive. You're doing the
Yeah.
most unconditionally loving thing you can do. You've chosen life. You're good. So if we take the word love out of our descriptions of things, guess what happens? We start using words that are far more meaningful and insightful. Instead of assuming that love means kindness, caring, and non-judgment, like I can answer that question like you answered. So I just want you to love me, right? And a lot of people will go, okay, I do that. No, you
What does
don't
that
even
look
know what
like?
she's really asking for, right?
Yeah.
And
Just
and so we need to describe it and give our partners and ourselves enough understanding and definition of what it is that we really desire and we really respond to and speak to that instead of putting it under this umbrella word that if it doesn't happen, all of a sudden you're finding yourself depreciating yourself or your partner because it's not there. You think you're not lovable or they don't love you. That's a travesty, right?
It
And it
is. And
happens in a second
yeah,
because you assumed what you knew love meant.
one of the chapters in your book is looking for love, no need. It's our life force.
Yeah.
And I'm so in alignment with that uh, statement. All through the dating industry is this term looking for love. And that just makes my head go sideways
Oh,
because
mine too.
I mean, hello, where is it, right? And there is no finding it. We're made of love. It's who human beings are. So it's about how do we release it? How do we share it together? How do we nurture it, expand it? It's so complex, isn't it? Being human.
Well, it is. This is the crazy thing, Julian. I don't know if it's because I'm just older now, but
I'm
to
64. You
me,
couldn't be much older.
excuse me,
I'm 64, so you couldn't be much older.
I am.
We're not going to tell. I don't even reveal age on my profiles, but I'll reveal mine anytime.
Oh, I mean, I've been around for a while. Okay. And I really, I have a different relationship with time. I think it's all an illusion. And so to me, it allows me to be young at heart. It allows me to be open always to growth. Like if the day I stop wanting to learn things and be emergent, that's the day I start dying. I've said this to when I was really working with all the women that were on my mailing list for years, their biggest complaint is why do older men look for younger women? Why are they always looking for younger women? How do we get around that? And I went, you're actually missing it. That men are not looking for young women, they're looking for women that are young at heart.
Aren't they looking for women that make them feel young, around whom they feel youthful, energetic, but also appreciated, admired, all of that?
Who wouldn't look for that?
Yeah.
Women too. Women too, unless a woman is like specifically, I want someone with a big bank account who's just going to let me spend money and do whatever I want in my home and travel wherever I want. They're not really looking for a partner. They're looking for a provider, right?
Right.
But if they're looking for a real partner, like that where there's a you, me, and a we, a true we, then yes, we want people that are growing, that are constantly emerging, that can have a day and go, oh my God, for 20 years I've been doing this, and that is messed up. And they're ready to change and excited about it and don't feel shitty or guilty because they were that way. They just know it took this long to get here. I have
Yeah.
some things in my life that took me a long time to figure out. And there are people today that figure that out in a quarter of the time.
There's
Co-creation.
something else I want to ask you, Larry, because it's in the book.
Yeah.
You'll have to tell us when we can actually access this book because the questions are going to be really popular. My question is about difference. What's good if two people are different from each other? In what ways can that be great? And in what ways can it be problematic? What is being too different?
Well, see if I can. That's a really good question, the way
It's
you
your
put
question, darling.
it. Well, my,
Let's see if
my
Larry
invitation, my
see if you
invitation
can
is
answer
for
your own
people.
question.
Yeah. So my invitation is for people to embrace differences, right? And and not look at differences as you're wrong and I'm right. But that's where you are and that's where I am. I mean, we can look at differences in color, in race, and we can
Politics.
choose in politics, for sure in politics, religion, all of those. And I remember years ago, I met this one woman. I just like I was stricken by her. And we had this wonderful, fun friendship that was like on the verge of turning into something else. And she was Seventh Day Adventist. And And I have so much respect for this woman because she lived her religion, loved it and lived it. She read the Bible, she did all these things. And I looked at that and I went, I've really never met anybody that, like, you've given me a new understanding of how your religion can actually be embraced as a lifestyle. I didn't even know it was possible. But for me, it wasn't my lifestyle. And I wasn't the one who was going to be going to church for her once a week. And she wanted a partner she could read the Bible with, right? So there's a difference. I didn't make her wrong. I actually respected it more than anything. She helped me see things that I never would have seen in that religion before. And I also knew that our difference was too great for us to be romantic partners, for us to have a family, to do those things. And and so I can respectfully, joyfully go, we're not right for each other. I say in the book, I say to people that when you go through this, the purpose is to be able to discern and discover if this person you're with is really the best partner for you. And you're going to find out that the answer is either, oh, hell yes, or you're going to find out, no, not really. In both situations, you are going to be put in a position to truly celebrate that information. Like, wouldn't it be great to be excited to discover something about someone or things about a person that you go, this is just not a match, instead of discover it 3 years later or 3 months later or 10 years later? Wouldn't it be great? And to be able to say, you know what, you're an amazing person. I'm certain with all the things that we've discovered about each other, we probably have a friendship that will last forever, but we're not a romantic partnership. And celebrate that. How great would that be? Right?
Hey, that means you're off the hook, Larry. But I love it. And it sounds like what you two did was you didn't cross the line into sex, intimacy, all of that. You got to know each other first without that attachment. And then you came to this realization, and now you're still probably very good friends.
We are. We are. We don't talk very often, but it's one of those friends that when you haven't talked to for a year and you get on the phone and it's like, I feel like we just hung up the other day, right?
Like you're in that category.
Yeah,
It's
you are
beautiful.
too. And I mean, it's like
Yeah, it's just that are
when
my
it's joyful
people.
to connect with someone,
Yeah,
and you and I have never even really had a chance to go very deep into what we believe in and how we do life or any of that. We know how we do our business.
yeah,
And I think there's a lot of mutual respect for that.
yeah.
Because for a
It,
long time in this industry, I didn't have a whole lot of respect. And so when I see people that are doing it really right and it's happening more often, it's great. And then
mm,
with our typology, I also know that that's our baseline. So when I send people to matchmakers, I want to know that they're incorporating genetic energetics into what they're looking at, which is interesting, Julie, because it's a typology. And guess what it has? Names for things. It's got labels.
tables.
And it's so interesting for me to write and say to people, don't attribute labels. And what I discovered, part of what brought that really to the surface, is that I started looking at so many different ways to assess and discover what people are. There's lots of different assessment systems and typologies and you name it. But I realized that when I was teaching my own students, certifying them to be practitioners, on the first day I would say to them, I'm going to give you a system that is so profound. It is the baseline for relationships, and I'm going to tell you I don't want you to use it. And they go, what did we pay for? And I go, here's the deal. Now I'm going to be more specific. I don't want you to lose it. I don't want you to use it to label people and project on them how they're going to behave.
I see.
This information, every typology out there, I don't care if you're into Vedic astrology, Western astrology, enneagrams, human design, gene keys, code, this could be a list that would take longer than this show to come up with. I don't care what it is, use the information to help you understand a circumstance when it comes up instead of project on someone how they're going to behave.
It takes a certain amount of courage. I love it. I just love everything you're talking about. So tell people how, if they want to work with you, when's the book going to be released? If they want more of Larry Michael, how do they get it?
So the book right now can be pre-ordered. What's fun about it is I've decided that those people that pre-order it, I'm going to do a very intimate, what I call a virtual live, it's a live virtual retreat, illumination retreat over 5 weeks, a deep dive twice a week and take people through the whole thing.
Yeah, I want to know all of it. So I'm going to pre-order that book so I can be part of all of this great action. So thank you very much for
It'll
your
be
time.
so fun to have you and with
Yeah,
this
really great.
group. This, wow, I love that.
Love it. So thank you for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take all this stuff to heart and you go out there and transform me to we for yourself.